There's a difference between worth and price. You only truly learn it when you lose something important. My own son and grandson? They only ever saw my price. The financial burden of an old woman in a rented apartment. They never imagined my worth. Have you ever wondered what it's like to be invisible? To your own family? I can still feel the weight of those documents in my wrinkled hand, my gaze fixed on the broken cup in the sink. My porcelain cup, hand-painted with delicate blue flowers, an heirloom from my mother. It cracked right down the middle when Ethan threw it, as if the object, like me, didn't deserve a whisper of care. In that moment, in my small apartment in the old neighborhood, something fractured within me. Not my heart, that had cracked so many times it had developed calluses. No, it was my patience, my easy complacency, my willingness to keep pretending their dismissiveness didn't matter. The truth is, even before that Sunday in May of 2022, I felt transparent. Like those flimsy dish towels bought by mistake, uselessly thin. An almost imperceptible presence, useful only when they needed something. An occasional babysitter, an emergency bank account, a quiet, inconvenient reminder that one day they too would age. But that Sunday, everything changed. That Sunday, I wasn't merely old Susan in a rented apartment. I was the heiress to a fortune no one suspected. And that, I realized, would be my silent weapon in a war they didn't even know we were fighting. A war for my dignity. I've always been a simple woman. I was born in 1946, back when our town was still a quiet little place, far from the hustle and bustle. My father worked in a factory. My mother took in sewing. Eleanor, my older sister, was always the adventurous one, the one who wanted to see the world. I was more of a homebody, more traditional. I married William at 24, a good man who worked at a major bank. We had only one child, David, after many frustrating attempts. William died 12 years ago, a sudden heart attack while mowing the lawn of our home. We sold the house later, when I realized I couldn't manage it alone, and I moved into the rented apartment. David met Sarah in business school. They married soon after graduating, and Ethan was born a year later. Back then, I was still the beloved grandma who made sour cream coffee cake and told stories. Sarah always kept a polite distance, not rude, but never building true connection. I noticed, but I pretended not to, for the sake of peace. I never complained about life. My public school teacher's pension wasn't much, but it covered the rent and expenses. Sometimes, when money was tight at the end of the month, I'd economize at the grocery store, buy less meat, substitute products. I never asked David for anything. Mornings in my apartment always started with the same ritual. Coffee brewing in the old coffee maker, the sound of the local news radio, and the chirping of birds in the almond tree in the square across the street. I'd open the windows to smell the bread from the corner bakery, mixed with the sweet scent of the jasmine I'd planted in pots on the balcony. The same jasmine my mother cultivated in the backyard of my childhood home. My apartment was small but cozy. Combined living room and kitchen, one bedroom, one bathroom. The living room walls proudly displayed my family photos in dark wood frames. I'd varnished myself. David as a child at the beach, baby Ethan in my lap, William at his retirement party. Memories of when I was still essential. On the living room shelf, my small collection of books, mostly romances by Jane Austen and Louisa May Alcott, some crochet patterns, and the black-covered Bible with my name embossed in gold, a wedding gift. Beside it, a carved wooden jewelry box held the few pieces left to me. My engagement ring, a gold chain with a tiny Virgin Mary medal William gave me when David was born, and my mother's pearl earrings. Life hummed along, a quiet rhythm. On Tuesdays, I went to the community center for my crochet and craft classes. On Thursdays, I met Brenda, my neighbor from 302, for coffee at the bakery. On Sundays, I went to 9 a.m. Mass at St. Bridget's. A simple life, yes, but perfectly enough for me. David and his family visited me once a month, usually on the last Sunday. Their visits were timed, precise, arriving around 10 a.m. after church, leaving by 1 p.m., always with an excuse about another commitment. Ethan, since hitting his teens, barely disguised his boredom. Glued to his phone, he'd answer in monosyllables. Sarah would mechanically ask how I was, if I needed anything, her eyes always darting to the clock. I noticed everything, but feigned ignorance. I'd lovingly prepare the baked ziti Ethan used to adore as a child, even knowing he now preferred the food at the other grandma's, Sarah's mother, who lived in a fancy high-rise in the suburbs and had a housekeeper to make sophisticated dishes. Eleanor, my sister, rarely came up in conversation. After she moved to Portugal in the 90s, our contact dwindled to sporadic phone calls on special occasions, and more recently, a few video calls Brenda helped me make on WhatsApp. Eleanor married Manuel, a Portuguese businessman she met during a trip. They never had children. We knew little of each other's lives in recent years. That's why the news of her death caught me utterly off guard. 3 days before that fateful Sunday, I was watching my evening show when the phone rang. An unknown number. "Mrs. Susan Peterson?" a formal male voice asked. "Yes, this is she." "This is Mr. Thomas Miller, from Miller & Associates Law Firm. I'm calling regarding your sister, Eleanor Peterson Smith." My heart jolted. News by phone, from lawyers, is rarely good news. "What happened to Eleanor?" "I regret to inform you, Mrs. Peterson, but your sister passed away 3 days ago, in Lisbon. A cerebral aneurysm." The floor dropped out from under me. My show played on, but the sound seemed distant, muffled, as if coming from another apartment. Eleanor, my older sister, my only sister, was gone. We hadn't seen each other in person for almost 8 years, not since she came to the States when William passed. "Mrs. Peterson, are you all right?" "Yes, no, I don't know," I stammered. "How did you know? Who gave you my contact?" "I'm the representative of the Portuguese firm handling your sister's affairs in the U.S. They contacted me immediately after her passing, as per instructions left by Mrs. Eleanor." I wiped away a single stubborn tear. Eleanor was always organized, always provident. Of course she would have left detailed instructions. "Her husband, Manuel. He passed away 3 years ago, Mrs. Peterson. Your sister didn't inform you of that." No, she hadn't. Our rare contacts meant I hadn't even known she was a widow, like me. One more shared truth I discovered too late. "I need to inform you that your sister left a very clear will. You are the sole heir to all her assets." The sentence didn't immediately register. I was more concerned with the funeral, with the fact that I couldn't say goodbye. "Mr. Miller, how do I go to the funeral? Do I need a passport?" "I don't have a passport." "Mrs. Peterson, I'm sorry, but the funeral already took place yesterday, following your sister's wishes for a quick and discreet ceremony." Another tear rolled down my cheek. Not even a proper goodbye. "Regarding the assets," he continued, "we need to talk in person. Your sister left a considerable estate, and you'll need to sign some documents." "Estate? What kind of estate?" "I prefer to explain in person. Can I visit you tomorrow afternoon?" I agreed, still reeling. That night I couldn't sleep. Memories flooded back. Eleanor as a girl, jumping rope in our parents' backyard. Eleanor as a teenager, trying on the red lipstick Mom forbade. Eleanor as an adult, always so determined, so independent. And now, Eleanor gone, without me able to say goodbye. The next day, Mr. Miller arrived promptly at 3 p.m. A man in his 50s, a well-cut suit, a genuine leather briefcase. He sat on my worn sofa with the same formality he'd command in a boardroom. "Mrs. Peterson, your sister and her husband made very successful investments over the years. Properties in Portugal, stocks, investment funds. With Mr. Manuel's passing, she inherited everything. Now with her passing, everything passes to you, her only living heir." He opened his briefcase and began showing me documents, bank statements, deeds. The numbers were staggering. $3 million in investments. A 3-bedroom apartment in Lisbon's Belém district. A summer house in the Algarve. Shares in Portuguese and American companies. "I'm talking about approximately $3 million, in addition to the properties," he concluded. "Your sister was a very astute investor, Mrs. Peterson." My wrinkled hands trembled as I gripped the papers. Eleanor, always the brave one, the risk-taker, had built a silent empire while I lived on my modest teacher's pension in a rented apartment. What do I need to do?" "Sign these documents to begin the transfer process. We'll need to open an account at a bank that handles international transactions. I can help you with all of that." I signed the papers with the Mont Blanc pen he offered me. My handwriting, normally steady for a woman of 76, came out shaky. Not from age, but from the sheer impact of the news. "How long until everything is transferred?" "International processes can take a few months, but I can arrange an initial transfer to cover immediate expenses, if you need." "No," I replied, surprising myself. "I don't want to touch anything. Not yet. I need to process all of this." He seemed to approve of my caution. He left his card, promised to keep in frequent contact, and said goodbye with a formal handshake. Alone again, I sat on the sofa, surrounded by documents proving I was now a wealthy woman. A millionaire, in fact. And no one but me knew. It was within this new reality that Sunday in May arrived. David, Sarah, and Ethan came to visit me because I'd asked for help with my cell phone, that Samsung David gave me for Christmas that I could never quite understand. I wanted them to teach me how to use the bank app to check my balance and my pension. The irony didn't escape me. Here I was, a freshly minted heiress, asking for help checking my meager bank balance. They arrived impatient. Sarah barely glanced up from her own phone. David tried to explain the app to me, but was visibly irritated by my slowness. "Mom, just click here, look. It's not hard." "This phone is too complicated, son. I preferred my old one, with buttons." "That one was prehistoric, Mom. This one is much better." Ethan lingered in the kitchen, rummaging through the cabinet, as if searching for something. I heard him open the fridge. "Is there nothing to eat here?" "I made sour cream coffee cake yesterday," I replied from the sofa. "It's in the blue container." I heard him pouring coffee. I made sure to take out the set of cups my mother left me, the ones with the hand-painted blue flowers. They were a treasure to me, more for their sentimental than material value. After a few minutes, I decided to go to the bathroom, and on my way back, I decided to stop in the bedroom to get the documents Mr. Miller had given me. I thought about showing them to David, asking his opinion, sharing the surprising news. After all, he was my son, my only son, That's when I heard Ethan's voice in the kitchen. "Grandma's such an embarrassment. She doesn't have 2 pennies to rub together," he declared loudly. 76 years old and still living in this cramped, rented apartment. Now she wants us to pay her bills, too. I froze in the hallway, the words a slap. Ethan's words struck precisely where it hurt most, my deepest fear, being a burden. "Keep your voice down," Sarah murmured, a lack of real concern in her voice. "She might hear you." "So what? It's true. David, seriously, aren't you tired of supporting her? Every month there's something. Medicine, house repairs, now this super expensive phone you gave her." I waited, heart aching, for David to defend me, for my son to speak up, to say I'd never asked for a dime, that the phone was a Christmas gift, that I'd always been independent. His silence was deafening. "Just get that bank app set up for her, and let's go," Sarah said. "Your mother called asking if we're having lunch there today." "I'm almost done," David finally replied, without defending me. "Can you hurry it up? Grandma Christine made her roasted turkey, the one I love. Don't want to miss it." That's when I heard the sound I'll never forget, the sharp crash of porcelain against the sink. Ethan had thrown the cup with such force, it simply cracked. "This old junk should have gone to the trash anyway," he muttered. Something inside me fractured at that moment. But unlike the cup, what broke in me wasn't to become useless. It was to make way for something new, something unbreakable. I returned quietly to the bedroom, inheritance documents clutched in my hand. I stared at them for a long moment, then tucked them into the crochet bag I'd made myself in my community center class. I took a deep breath, adjusted my gray hair, and returned to the living room, as if nothing had happened. "I've set up the bank app, Mom," David said, returning my phone. "Now you can see your balance and your pension when you log in." "Thank you, son," I replied, a calm that belied the storm raging within me. "Don't you want to stay for lunch? I made that baked ziti Ethan used to love so much when he was little." "Can't, Grandma. We have plans at the other grandma's house," Ethan replied, not looking me in the eye. "She made that roasted turkey everyone loves." It was then that the word slipped out of my mouth before I could stop it. "Ah, yes. The grandma you can crash with, isn't it?" The silence that followed settled like a rock in everyone's stomach. David stared, shocked. Sarah fumbled with her phone, feigning interest in a message. "That's not what he meant, Mom." David tried to fix it. "It's exactly what he said while I was in the bedroom. That I'm an embarrassment, that I don't have 2 pennies to rub together." I'd never seen my son squirm so much. Ethan flushed red, whether from anger or shame. I couldn't tell. "You misunderstood," Sarah intervened. "He was just worried about you living alone. That's all." I opened my crochet bag, the one I'd made myself in the classes I attended at the community center on Tuesdays. I took out the documents Mr. Miller had given me and placed them squarely on the kitchen table. "I think I'll have a place to fall dead now," I stated with a quiet dignity I didn't know I possessed. At that moment, I decided I wouldn't tell them about the inheritance. Not yet. Something inside me, perhaps the same pride my mother always said I had too much of, made me keep the revelation to myself. I gathered the papers before they could read a single word. "They're just some condo documents," I lied. A rare thing for me. "They're delaying the building's painting again. Go on, to the other grandma's lunch." I saw confusion in their eyes. David stared, as if trying to decipher what had happened to his always docile, understanding mother. Sarah seemed relieved this uncomfortable moment could finally end. Ethan merely shrugged, still simmering from being confronted. "So, we should get going," David said hesitantly. "I'll call you this week." "No need to bother." They left in a hasty retreat, leaving behind a heavy silence and a broken cup in the sink. I stared at that broken porcelain for a long time, as if looking at a portrait of what my relationship with my family had become. What they didn't know was that from that moment, something fundamental had shifted within me. I had changed, because now I knew exactly what I needed to do. The following week completely altered the course of my life and my relationship with my family, because sometimes, to truly rebuild something valuable, you must first allow what's broken to fully reveal itself. The phone didn't ring for the entire following week. Not David, nor Sarah, much less Ethan. It was as if that Sunday had cleaved an abyss between us, and no one knew how to bridge it. I didn't make any effort to call either. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel guilty about it. I kept the broken cup in a shoebox. Couldn't bring myself to toss it. Those cracks were now part of its story, just as my hurts were part of mine. Every now and then, I'd open the box, tracing the jagged edges of the porcelain, and let the tears come. Not for me, but for the girl I once was, watching my mother handle those cups with such reverence, as if they were made of crystal. The following Tuesday, as usual, I went to the community center for my crochet class. On the way, I noticed how much my neighborhood had changed. So many new buildings, so many different stores. The old neighborhood of my youth, with its single-story houses and blooming gardens, barely existed anymore. Just as the grandma Ethan had loved as a child seemed to have vanished for him. On my way home, I stopped at the bakery to buy bread. That's when I saw Brenda, my neighbor from 302, sitting at one of the tables outside, having coffee. "Susan, come sit." She waved, her wide smile showing off her white teeth. All natural, as she liked to emphasize. Brenda was a few years younger than me, a widow like me, but with an energy that seemed inexhaustible. Her hair was dyed reddish-brown, and her nails were always done. She was a retired biology teacher, and now gave private lessons to supplement her income. She knew everyone in the neighborhood, and all the latest news. "You've been scarce," she commented as I joined her. "Everything all right?" I hesitated. Brenda and I were friends, but I'd never shared family problems with her. A lump formed in my throat, and to my surprise, I began to cry, right there in the bakery, with people passing, soft music playing oldies. "Susan, what is it? Are you sick?" Between sobs, I told her everything. Eleanor's death, the unexpected inheritance, Ethan's cruel words, David and Sarah's complicit silence, and finally my decision not to tell them about the money. "Oh, my heavens, Susan! You're rich!" she exclaimed, adjusting her glasses, as if to make sure she'd heard me right. "I am, Brenda, and no one in my family's going to know for now." Brenda just looked at me, her brown eyes shining with an unreadable light. For an instant, I feared she would judge me, call me petty. Instead, she took my hand across the table. "You're right, Susan. Absolutely right." "You think so?" "Of course. If they treat you like that when they think you have nothing, imagine how false they'd be if they knew about the inheritance." She squeezed my hand tighter. "Money doesn't buy true respect. If they're ever going to respect you, it should be for who you are, not for what you possess." Her words were a balm. Someone finally understood. "But what are you going to do with all that money?" she asked, leaning forward with curiosity. "I've hired Mr. Miller to help me manage everything. I'm selling one of the properties in Portugal. I've opened an account at a new bank." I paused. "And I'm going to buy an apartment." "Great idea! In what neighborhood?" "In the same upscale condo complex where Ethan's other grandma lives." Brenda's eyes widened. Then she let out such a loud laugh that heads turned at nearby tables. "Susan Peterson! Who knew that behind that innocent facade lay such a clever strategist?" I couldn't help but smile. It was the first time in days I felt light, almost joyful. We talked for another hour, planning, dreaming. Brenda helped me map out the next steps, from selling the Portugal property to searching for the perfect apartment. "They need to learn a lesson," she said as we parted ways at the building door. "And you, my friend, are going to be the teacher." In the following weeks, my life took on a completely new rhythm. Mr. Miller proved not just a competent lawyer, but a sensible advisor. Following his advice, I sold the house in the Algarve. The money was transferred to my new account at a private bank he introduced me to. "Mrs. Peterson, are you sure you want to go through with this plan? Buying an apartment in the same complex as your daughter-in-law's family. Isn't it a bit provocative?" "Mr. Miller," I said, "I've spent my entire life being discreet, accommodating, always worried about bothering anyone. At 76, I think I deserve a little provocation, don't you agree?" He smiled, adjusting his glasses. "Undoubtedly, Mrs. Peterson. I simply want to be sure the decision is made with clarity, not solely by the hurt of the moment." "The hurt woke me up, Doctor, but clarity is guiding my decisions now." With Brenda's help, I began looking for apartments in the Villaggio estates, in the upscale suburbs, where Christine, Sarah's mother, and Ethan's other grandma lived. I'd never been, but Sarah and Ethan constantly mentioned the place, always highlighting its heated pool, gym, and panoramic view. "Are you related to any residents?" asked the realtor, a woman in her 40s, when we visited the first apartment. "Not exactly," I replied. "I'm looking for a place that offers comfort and security for this phase of my life." The realtor looked me over. A 76-year-old woman, simply dressed, accompanied by an equally modest friend. And her expression revealed immediate doubts about my financial capability. "This complex boasts some of the most valuable real estate in the area. Apartments here start at $2 million. "I know, dear," I replied calmly. "Money won't be an issue." She seemed unconvinced, but continued the tour. 3 bedrooms, a spacious living room with a gourmet balcony, a custom kitchen, a full maid's quarters. An impressive city view. We visited 3 more apartments in the same complex that day. None completely convinced me. Either the view wasn't ideal, or the layout of the rooms didn't appeal to me. "You're quite demanding," the realtor commented, no longer bothering to hide her impatience. "When one is investing millions, I believe one has the right to be demanding, don't you?" It was in the 4th apartment we visited a few days later that I found what I was looking for. A duplex penthouse with 4 bedrooms, a terrace overlooking the entire city, and the detail that sealed the deal, located in the very same building as Christine, Sarah's mother. "This is perfect," I said to Brenda, who accompanied me again. "I can already imagine the look on their faces when they find out." The apartment cost $6 million, a sum that, months before, would have been unthinkable for me. Now, it was just a number. I made an offer the same day. The realtor, who had initially underestimated me, now seemed impressed with my negotiating skills. Do you have experience with real estate, Mrs. Peterson? Let's just say I learned by observing close relatives, I replied, thinking of Eleanor and how she must have negotiated her own investments over the years. In less than a month, the apartment was mine. During that period, David called only twice. Short, practically perfunctory conversations. He'd ask how I was, if I needed anything, but a palpable distance resonated in his voice. I'd reply that I was fine, that I didn't need anything. I didn't mention the inheritance or the new apartment. Mom, about that Sunday, Ethan didn't mean it that way. Yes, he did, David. And the worst part wasn't his words. It was your silence. What did you expect? He's my son. And I'm your mother. The simplicity of the statement seemed to hit him, because he was silent for a few seconds. Can we come over on Sunday? Talk in person? I won't be home Sunday. I have commitments. It wasn't a lie. I would be with the decorators, choosing furniture for my new apartment. But he didn't need to know that. Not yet. David seemed surprised. I never refused his visits, no matter how brief or uncomfortable. I was always available, always waiting, always grateful for any crumb of attention. What kind of commitments? Personal, son. I'll let you know when. I hung up, a strange mix of guilt and liberation washing over me. I was learning to set boundaries, even if late in life. The apartment was decorated with help from an interior designer Brenda knew. I opted for a classic style, but with contemporary touches. Beige leather sofas, a solid oak dining table for 12, Persian rugs over marble floors. On the main living room wall, I had an entire bookshelf installed, solely for books. All the books I'd always wanted and could never afford. The master bedroom was decorated in light blue tones, reminiscent of a spring day sky. The king-size canopy bed, something I'd always found beautiful in movies and magazines, was now mine. In the guest room, which I secretly imagined might one day be David's if he chose to visit, I selected neutral colors and a more sober decor. One bedroom I transformed into a studio for my craft and crochet work. I bought the best sewing machine available, shelves for organizing threads and fabrics, an ample table for working. I intended to continue frequenting the community center. Those ladies were an important part of my life. But now I could also create at home, in comfort. The fourth bedroom I left reserved, without specific purpose. Perhaps one day, if Ethan wanted to visit. But that possibility felt increasingly distant. It's all ready, Mrs. Peterson, the designer said the afternoon we finished decorating. When do you plan to move? Next weekend, I replied, looking around, still adjusting to the idea that this luxurious place was now my home. I returned to my small apartment in the old neighborhood, feeling strangely torn. That modest place had been my refuge for so many years. I knew every corner, every sound, every scent. The walls held memories, some sweet, others bittersweet. It was hard to imagine leaving it behind. That night, I took the shoebox where I kept the broken cup from the closet. I looked at it for a long time, running my fingers over its cracks. I decided I would take it with me, not as a reminder of pain, but as a testament to the strength I'd found in that moment. The last step of my plan was the most important, to invite everyone to dinner. A dinner where I would finally reveal who Susan Peterson truly was. I asked Brenda to help with the invitations. We chose elegant cards, textured cream paper, with gold lettering. Saturday, August 20th, at 8 p.m. Of course, I sent invitations to David, Sarah, and Ethan, but also to Christine, Sarah's mother, and to Brenda, my loyal friend. Mr. Miller, too. He deserved to be present for this moment. Lastly, I invited 2 friends from the community center, Pat and Connie, who had always been kind. David called me the same day he received the invitation. "Mom, what's this? You sent an invitation to dinner at the Villaggio Estates? Is this some kind of joke?" "No, son, it's no joke. But this address? It's the same building as Sarah's mother. The exact same building, to be precise." "I don't understand. Did you rent a party room? How did you get access?" "I didn't rent anything, David. The apartment is mine." Silence on the other end of the line. So long I thought the call had dropped. "What do you mean yours? That makes no sense. Those apartments cost millions." "I know, son. It cost $2 million, to be exact." Another silence, thicker. "Mom, what's going on? Are you okay? Do you need me to come over right now?" "I'm perfectly fine, David. Everything will be explained at dinner on Saturday." "Mom, I'm worried. Are you involved with someone who's—" "David," I interrupted, my voice firm. "I am an adult woman who has made a decision. You can respect that and attend, or you can continue to doubt my sanity. The choice is yours." I hung up, a rush of adrenaline coursing through me. I'd never spoken to my son like that. It was as if, at 76, I was finally learning to exist as a complete person, not just as a mother, a grandmother, a widow. In the days leading up to the dinner, I hired a high-end catering service, selected special wines with Mr. Miller's help, and chose a new dress. Elegant navy blue, found with Brenda's help at a boutique. "Are you nervous?" Brenda asked on the morning of the big day, as she helped me arrange the last things in the new apartment. "A little," I admitted. "But I'm also excited, like I'm about to be reborn." "You deserve this, Susan. To be seen, to be respected. If they can't see the incredible woman you are without all this money, at least now they'll have to fake it better." We laughed, a conspiratorial laugh, sharing a delicious secret. That night, dressed and made up, I waited for my guests in the spacious living room of my new home. The broken cup rested inside a glass dome, like a piece of art, on the side table. I wanted it there, witnessing my transformation. The first to arrive were Pat and Connie, my friends from the community center. They gasped at the apartment. "Susan, when you said you'd inherited some odds and ends from your sister, we never imagined this," exclaimed Pat, marveling at the panoramic view from the terrace. Next, Mr. Miller arrived, elegant in his dark suit, accompanied by his wife. Brenda followed soon after, radiant in a red dress. At 8:15 p.m., the doorbell rang again. I took a deep breath before answering. It was Christine, Sarah's mother, with an expression of absolute confusion on her face. "Mrs. Peterson, I received your invitation, but I confess, I thought it was some mistake." "No mistake, Christine. Please come in. Welcome." She entered, looking around as if in a strange dream. I recognized the expression, identical to Sarah's when she visited my old apartment, that mixture of discomfort and barely disguised superiority. At 8:30 p.m., when I was starting to think David, Sarah, and Ethan wouldn't come, the doorbell rang for the last time. I opened the door, and there they were, all three, with expressions ranging from suspicion, confusion, and, in Ethan's case, something close to hostility. "Mom, what does all this mean?" David demanded the moment he stepped inside, without even properly greeting me. "Good evening to you too, son," Sarah, Ethan, welcome." Ethan looked around, jaw dropped. Sarah seemed suspicious, as if she was about to discover a hoax. "Grandma, how did you get this place?" "It's a long story, Ethan. One to be told over dinner." I invited everyone to sit at the table. David and his family kept their distance from the other guests, like wary strangers. When everyone was seated, I asked for their attention and rose, holding a glass of wine. "I thank all of you for being here tonight. A night so special to me. Some of you have known me for many years. Others, perhaps, think they know me." I glanced quickly at David and his family. We are here to celebrate not only my new home, but also the beginning of a new phase in my life. I paused, taking a small sip of wine, gathering courage. Earlier this year, I received the news of my sister, Eleanor's, passing. Many of you didn't even know I had a sister. She lived overseas for decades. Eleanor left me as her sole heir, an inheritance that allowed me to buy this apartment and start my life over at 76. David's eyes widened. Sarah's fork clattered to her plate. Ethan sat, petrified. "A few months ago, I heard someone say that I was an embarrassment, that I didn't have 2 pennies to rub together." I looked directly at Ethan, whose eyes dropped. At that moment, I already knew about the inheritance, but I chose not to share it. I wanted to first understand who truly cared about me, Susan, the person. Not Susan, the older woman who might or might not have resources. The silence at the table was absolute. Even Brenda, who knew the entire story, seemed moved. I am not hosting this dinner to flaunt wealth or to humiliate anyone. I am doing it because I want to establish a new dynamic with the people in my life. One based on mutual respect and dignity. I looked at the glass dome with the broken cup. That cup belonged to my mother. It was broken in anger, carelessly, as if it held no value. Just as I felt, for too long. But just as I decided not to throw away the broken cup, I also decided not to give up on myself, nor on the relationships that can still be mended, even if they bear scars. David's eyes welled with tears. Sarah looked deeply uncomfortable. Ethan alternated between shame and a profound re-evaluation of who I was. "So, let's have dinner and talk, as people who respect each other, as family, if that's what we still choose to be." I sat, an enormous weight lifting from my shoulders. Brenda, sitting beside me, discreetly squeezed my hand under the table, a silent gesture of support and admiration. The dinner proceeded, an initially tense atmosphere gradually dissipating. Pat and Connie told funny stories from the community center. Mr. Miller talked about how he met my sister Eleanor years ago. Christine, initially out of place, found common ground when we discovered our shared love for gardening. David remained silent for almost the entire dinner. When dessert was served, a caramel flan, my mother's recipe which I'd insisted on preparing myself, he finally spoke. "Mom, I don't know what to say. I'm shocked, confused, ashamed, all at once." "You don't need to say anything now, son. We'll have time. I never defended you against those words because deep down, I was also tired. Tired of worrying, of feeling responsible. And that's no excuse, but a shameful explanation of my failure as a son." His eyes welled. For the first time in a long time, I saw raw sincerity in them. Sarah, beside him, seemed diminished, less self-assured. "Mrs. Peterson, I always admired you, but I let my own insecurities and prejudices speak louder. I apologize. Ethan, my grandson, the same one who had broken the cup and called me an embarrassment, now looked at me as if seeing me for the first time. Grandma, I was an idiot. A complete idiot. Yes, you were, I replied with a sincerity that surprised everyone, myself included. But we all make mistakes, Ethan. The important thing is to learn from them. He nodded, swallowing hard. Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me? I looked at my grandson, the boy who once ran into my arms when David brought him to visit, the teenager who gradually distanced himself, the young adult who became so focused on status and appearances, he'd forgotten fundamental values. I've already forgiven you, Ethan. But forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's rebuilding. And rebuilding trust takes time. He nodded again, a tear tracing a path down his cheek. The dinner ended shortly after midnight. With everyone gone save Brenda, who was staying with me that first night in the new apartment, we sat on the terrace, looking at the city lights. So, how do you feel? She asked, pouring us more wine. Like I've just been born, I replied, a calm smile on my face. At 76, I finally feel seen. And what comes next? I looked at the city horizon, a skyline that had witnessed my whole life. The loves, the losses, the struggles, the small victories. Next, I'm going to live, Brenda. Not just exist, but truly live every day I have left. I'm going to travel, see the world Eleanor saw. I'm going to learn new things, do everything I always put off. And as for my family... I paused, thoughtful. As for your family, she prompted, we'll rebuild little by little, without rushing, without unrealistic expectations, but also without me ever diminishing myself again. We toasted under the starry sky. Two women with wrinkles etched on their faces, wisdom in their eyes, celebrating not just a material inheritance, but the most valuable inheritance of all: dignity. 3 months have passed since that memorable dinner. Much has changed. Other things remain the same. I still go to the community center on Tuesdays. Those ladies are an important part of my life and keep me connected to who I've always been. David and I have been meeting weekly for lunches. Difficult conversations were necessary. Tears shed. Painful truths laid bare. But little by little, we are rebuilding our relationship on more solid foundations. Sarah has been making an effort, in her own way. She started inviting me to family events, something she'd rarely done before. I still sense a certain artificiality in her attentions, but I understand true change takes time. Ethan surprised me the most. After the initial shock, he had the courage to seek me out alone, without his parents. We sat on my apartment terrace and talked for hours. For the first time, I truly saw my grandson as an adult. His doubts, his fears, his ambitions. I discovered that behind his materialistic facade lay an insecure young man, constantly comparing himself to others. "Do you think money brings happiness, Grandma?" he asked me that day. "Money itself? No, but the freedom it provides. That can certainly open paths to happiness," I replied. "However, Ethan, you need to understand, respect and dignity are priceless." I was the same person when I lived in that small apartment as when I moved here. What changed was simply how people saw me. He nodded thoughtfully. I learned that the hard way, didn't I? Sometimes the most important lessons are the most painful ones. As for me, I'm learning to balance the Susan I've always been, simple, discreet, affectionate, with this new version, more assertive, more confident, freer. I took my first international trip to Lisbon, where Eleanor lived. I walked her streets, feeling a connection we never had in life. That broken cup is still in the glass dome in my living room. Not as a reminder of pain, but as a symbol of my transformation. The cracks are now part of its beauty, just as my experiences, good and bad, are part of who I've become. Last week I ran into Christine, Sarah's mother, in the elevator. She lives 2 floors below me. After the initial awkwardness, we've developed a cordial relationship. That day, she invited me to join the book club she attends. "We're reading Little Women by Louisa May Alcott," she said. "I think you'd enjoy it." "Louisa May Alcott is one of my favorite authors," I replied, surprised by the invitation. "See? We have more in common than we ever imagined." Perhaps she's right. Perhaps we all have more in common than appearances suggest. In a recent conversation with David, he asked if I was happy with all these changes. "Happy isn't quite the word, son," I replied. "I'm at peace. Finally at peace with myself, with my choices, with my place in the world. And what about us? Our family?" I looked at him, at the boy I once held in my arms, the young man I saw become a man, the adult who was now trying to rebuild a bridge he himself helped destroy. Family isn't who shares our blood, but who holds our heart, and I finally chose to hold my own. He nodded, eyes welling, finally understanding what I'd always known, that true respect and love cannot be bought, nor inherited. They must be built, day by day, word by word, gesture by gesture. The inheritance I received from Eleanor gave me material comfort and financial freedom. But the true inheritance I carry, and which I hope to pass forward, is the understanding that our worth as human beings should never be measured by what we possess, but by who we truly are. They say life begins at 40. In my case, it began at 76. And what a wonderful beginning it has been.